So I just implemented the pull request against the overlay services, and I figured I would talk through it to help with the pull request and any conversation around just communicating the concept. So I'm actually going to go through the Git changes for this commit, so we can look at both how it was and how it is. So first of all, oops. Okay, so I created a couple new types here. So one type is the transaction context, which stores the full transaction object, and then also the transaction ID as a string, so we don't have to rehash it every time we want to get it. And then we've got a map here that is it's admittance instructions per topic within the context of this transaction. But I actually extended admittance instructions to include an array of data parsed out of the inputs and an array of data parsed out of the outputs. And these can be whatever a topic manager wants to use. It might have some binary formatted thing it pulls out. It might have JSON, and it might have a certain schema. It might, who knows? It can literally be anything. So a topic manager can basically import metadata about each input that it processes and about each output. All right, so that's the transaction context. So if we go to the topic manager next, so I left all the old methods as they are, so as if we want to keep them for full backwards compatibility, that's cool. So here I added two new methods. One is get dependencies, where a topic manager can return an array of other topic managers it is dependent upon. So it will not run until all of them have completed. And then I created an extended version of the identify admittance instructions. Rather than taking a beef, it's now taking the deserialized, well, it's getting the transaction context, which has the full deserialized transaction in it. And instead of an admittance instructions, this is returning an extended admittance instructions. Similarly, on the lookup service, I created an extended version of both of output added and output spent. So that just means when we run data through the lookup service, it has the full transaction context, which is, again, the raw transaction and any of the data that any of the topic managers have identified. And this is, so where it used to get transaction ID, output index, and output script, the transaction ID and the output script both live in this transaction context. We still need the output index so we know which one we're looking at. And that's all. So then here is the change to the engine itself. So when we first come through the submit process, we do create a transaction context, populating it with the transaction we got from the beef and the transaction ID generated from that transaction, and an empty topic data map. Okay. So here we used to map over all these topics, and it was doing those as an array of promises, which were then promise.ald. So now, rather than using an array here, I'm using a map. And so this map is keyed by the topic, and the processing flow is moved into a promise being added to that map. This promise.resolve topic.then topic basically passes that topic variable into the scope of this function. And the fact that I'm thenning it means my synchronous code is going to run first. So my full map is going to get built up for all the topics before any of the processing actually happens. And then within each topic, we can look up and see if it has any dependencies, or if the get dependencies method is not defined, we'll just get an empty array. Then if I have dependencies, I am doing a promise.all to await for those dependent processes to finish before I continue processing through this topic. So that's basically, the dependency was pretty easily solved with that. So in this section, what it was doing before, it was creating an array of promises where it was marking all the inputs as spent, including having the lookup services mark that they are spent. And it was also at the same time essentially parsing the transactions to figure out what inputs are, or what outputs are admissible. And then those were being, let's see, topic promises. Oh, that was being run. Wait a second. Am I wrong on this? Oh, right here. It was promise.alling both of those at the same time. So to kind of bring the functionality of the context being passed through, I actually serialized those two calls such that admissible output promise is run first. Wait a second. Oh, I scrolled past it. So I'm no longer creating a promise for this directly. I'm just calling it inline. I don't need to give a variable to name it because I'm just awaiting it. So then this is going through, and if I have an identify extended admittance instructions, it will run that. Otherwise, it will run identify. Wait a second. I think I named that wrong. Let's see here. Let's go to and nope, not engine. That is in the topic manager. Should have called this rename symbol. Oops. Identify extended admissible outputs. Now, I'm totally fine if these things get renamed or whatever. I'm just kind of naming them to be descriptive of what they are right now. All right, so I will push that when I'm done with this. So if that method exists, it calls it. Otherwise, it calls the old one. And because this new extended admittance instruction is an admittance instruction, these two admissible outputs will be fine being. Now I did extend this type to make it an extended admittance instructions, but if it's another one, it'll be fine because those are options. The extended, oops, wrong thing again. Both the new properties are optional, so that will work just fine. So those all get run. Wait a second. I wait those. Okay, and then this is what was the mark spent promise before. Now it's just, so I'm going through all the outputs that I've got and I am marking them spent. And again, if I have the extended method, I will call the extended method. Otherwise, I will call the non-extended method if it exists. And then rather than doing a promise.all of topic promises, which is what I did before, I'm now doing promise.all of object.values of topic promise map. So it's essentially the same execution flow. And then when we save the outputs, same kind of thing. We check and see if the output added extended is there. If it is, we call it. Otherwise, we call the regular output added if it's there. And that's it. So I'm going to commit my rename. Nope. What did I call it before? Okay. So that's the walkthrough of the pull request. Good night.